Hi. So, I wanted to continue my series from yesterday where I briefly spoke about the comparison between a domestic violence perpetrator and somebody that engages in genocide. So, I'm going to continue on that series. So, let's just call them aggressor behaviors and victim behaviors. And we're going to break it down. All right? So, I still will be going on the like the comparative analogy of a domestic violence survivor victim relationship to a massive global genocide that's been going on in Gaza. All right, so you have aggressors and victims, and you will be lied to saying, oh, this is a complex issue, there's such a thing called like mutual abuse, right? In domestic violence world, when you go to family court, they'll talk about, oh, it's mutual abuse. We can't tell, it's not easy to tell who the aggressor is. And that's what Israel will say too. They'll be like, oh, Palestine, they did this and they did that. Now let's look at what the issues are. An aggressor wants total domination. A victim wants to exist. They simply want to exist. In the domestic violence space, you will have an aggressor. And these are not gender specific. I mean, you can have female domestic violence offenders. Statistically, it happens to be male. So we're going to go with that for purposes of this discussion. So the husband or father in this instance will say, oh, I want majority custody. And like even that is not enough. There's a pattern of escalating behavior. We notice in the domestic violence space, in post-separation abuse, there's a pattern of escalating behavior. It's never, oh, I made a mistake. I shoved her once and now I'm going to reform and be a decent human being going forward. It's never that. They don't think there's anything wrong with them. They believe in total domination. Same in Israel, Gaza. Israel wants total domination. They are literally, as we are speaking, implementing a plan for genocide. The main reason for that is the victim knows the truth. The victim knows who the aggressor is, and they want the truth to be eliminated. They cannot live in a space where there are two truths. An actual adult with an adult brain, recognizes nuance and that there are two truths. Somebody who's an aggressor wants to dominate the conversation, wants to write the history. They want the ownership on history, saying, oh, I am the hero over here. Versus the reality where there are two sides to the equation, right? Palestine just wants to exist in peace. They're okay with sharing because they're the ones who invited Zionists over to set up their own little space. Israel wants domination. In a domestic violence world, the mother usually is okay with, even if the abuser has abused her and the kids, the victim is okay with sharing custody. The abuser wants full custody. Next up, so it is, let's see, who has high resources and who doesn't. So in Gaza and in Israel, Gaza, Israel has an unbelievable amount of resources in terms of finances, in terms of military power, to a small nation that doesn't have the resources. They will talk about, oh, but Hamas, that's reactive abuse. That's what happens in domestic violence space. The aggressor will keep escalating their abuse until the victim turns around and tries to protect themselves. And when they do that, the roles flip. And then you have is the Darwo. Deny, attack, and then reverse victim and offender roles. Now the aggressor is saying, but I'm the victim. The aggressor, look what they did on October 7th. Look at the aggressor. She broke a glass. Not on them, just somewhere. But they will change the victim and aggressor roles, and then they will claim that they are the victims. But you know the pattern when you look at who has the most resources. In the domestic violence space, typically men are the ones that engage in financial abuse, so they have the most monetary power, and they will use that monetary power to buy off the judges, to pay whoever it takes, to be as aggressive as possible, engage in financial and legal abuse. The same thing, the legal abuse, case after case after case. Usually the victim will file divorce and leave, and then there are 10 cases of I guess contempt charges on being 5 minutes late for a drop off, or just nonsensical contempt charges or custody charges that are filed by the aggressor. You can see just by the sheer number of cases filed who the aggressor is. The same thing with Israel Gaza. The sheer number of how many attacks have happened and who has done it. Is it proportional to what they claim is their victimhood? Last thing, number of lies. So in a domestic violence case, because it's a civil issue and not a criminal case, in criminal cases it is you are innocent until proven guilty. In the civil cases, it doesn't matter. You can lie, you can just make up any claims, and as long as you make up a claim, they will take you seriously. So there are no repercussions. I mean, there should be for committing perjury, but in reality, there isn't. They'll make up things like, oh, but it's a civil case. It's okay. He lied. So what? So it's okay to just have an inordinate, extremely high number of lies, or in Israel's case, false news. They will spam as much as possible, as much lies as possible, just to confuse the public, the smoke and mirrors show. But when you look at the reality, look at the data. In a domestic violence case, there's data that the perpetrator is lying. There's data to show the perjury, to show the victim intimidation, yet it's denied. In Gaza, there's data to show who's the liar and who's speaking the truth, but it's buried by the sheer amount of lies that exist in the digital space, in media. So based on these two, you can clearly see who the aggressor is, who the victim is. And this is the same in the domestic violence space as it is in a mass genocide. In 2023, we do not need war or violence as a means to solve our problems. Another similarity I'd like to bring out is this idea of titles. Aggressors love titles. They want to confuse you with titles and not behaviors. When MLK Jr. said he dreamed of a future where his children will be judged on the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. The character of a person is more important than their titles. The title could be doctor, judge, dictator, president. What is the character? What is the character of Netanyahu? What is the character of the father? The same concept applies in both instances. When it comes to custody, they'll still say, oh, the child needs the father. He's the father of the child. They need that. What is the character of the father? We take the title, and then based on the title, we prescribe character versus looking at the character and then prescribing the title. We think because this person's a mother or a father, they need to be loving and caring. Versus, are they a loving and caring person? And should they be given the title of mother and father? Similarly, we'll say, oh, a judge, they're a judge. They should be, they're probably very non-biased and, ethical and moral. Versus, are they an ethical and moral person? Are they non-biased person? Should they be given the title of judge? Similarly, a leadership position, a president, a dictator, whatever, they're supposed to be caring, compassionate, take care of their community and their members. But it's like we do the reverse. Look at the behaviors, not the title, not the words that are coming from their mouth. Anybody can lie. People will say, oh, it's so confusing, but they say they love their kids, but they say they care about Israel. They say they care about, all the people, all the Jewish people. Do they care about the Jewish people? Does Netanyahu care about his own populace? Or does he care about himself? So look at the behaviors, not the words coming from their mouths, not their title, president, judge, father, whatever it is. The titles do not matter, the behaviors do. Now, how do we counter that? So, abusers only care about PNC, power and control. That's the only thing they care about. You cannot speak to their humanity. They're psychopaths. They can pretend like they care and they love, but they from a neurological, biological standpoint, their nervous system from their brain to the tip of their toes is broken. They are broken people with a broken nervous system. Behavior is dictated by your neurology. You cannot appeal to their goodness. There is no goodness. It doesn't exist in these kind of people. They have the same neurotype. A serial killer, a dictator, a domestic violence offender, they all have the same neurotype. They don't feel feelings and emotions empathy. They can't have empathy. They can't have this morality. They are externally motivated. The locus of control is always external. So when it comes to power and control, the only thing they really care about is perception. We went over this yesterday. They care about how they're perceived. They care about maintaining control. When it comes to perception, they rely on silence. In Israel, they will cut off internet, they'll cut off any kind of media access. They want people to be silent, and they want the people who don't care. It's like, oh, but you don't live in Gaza, you live in America, you live in Europe. Like, why do you care? Same concept with domestic violence. When a domestic violence perpetrator comes to you and say, my husband, my spouse is abusing me, and you be like, oh, but that's a domestic violence. It's between them. None of my business. That's the same thing you're doing when you know genocide is happening and you're choosing to turn a blind eye. Because it's not just them. It's not just a private issue. This is a public health and public safety issue. The number of, if you're saying, oh, but there's serial killers and the murders happening, why do we care about domestic violence? Those serial killers and murderers started off as domestic violence offenders, started off as child abusers, started off as people who engage in animal cruelty. You want to stop the mass murderers and serial killers and people who take a gun and go into a Walmart and shoot down everybody. Take the low-level offenses. They're not low-level offenses, but they're deemed as low-level offenses by society, like domestic violence, child abuse, and animal cruelty. Take that seriously, and then you will stop the mass murderers. And then you will stop people like Netanyahu taking power. All those, Ted Bundy was somebody's uncle, somebody's cousin, somebody's boyfriend. And he probably engaged in these behind the four walls, behind the door kind of behaviors before he had the strength and courage enough to go around murdering people. When somebody comes to you and says, I need help, I'm being abused, take it seriously. And that's exactly what Gaza is doing right now. You turning a blind eye is you supporting the abuser. There is no neutrality over here. There's no neutrality when it comes to racism. There's no neutrality when it comes to domestic violence. There's no neutrality when it comes to genocide. There is no neutral space. Your silence is supporting the abuser. That's what they want. They want you to be silent. They want you to think that this is a complex issue. There's mutual abuse. You can't tell who's the aggressor. You can tell who's the aggressor is. And you being silent is supporting them. And the other thing they care about is power and control. How do they get the power and control? It's by elections. So they take on political positions, judges, leaders, presidents, CEOs, or money. Now, how do you counter that? When you look at the history of just political history in general, when there is an oppressed side and an oppressor, you cannot use the tools of an oppressor to counter it. You cannot use aggression and violence to counter it. The successful campaigns where the oppressors have been able to kind of change that tide. Let's take the Indian Revolution. Let's take in America civil justice, right? MLK Jr., Gandhi. They both were strong proponents of a non-violent approach. Why? Because you can't use, they are violent. They think like psychopaths. You need to understand your opponent before you can plan your strategy. You can't appeal to their inner goodness. They don't have one. They're pretty much like animals. A dog doesn't learn tricks because it wants to. It doesn't wake up and say, today I would like to learn how to sit. Today I would like to learn how to roll over. They do it because there's an external reward. When they sit, they get a cookie. When they roll over, they get a doggy cookie. That's how psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists think. They think externally. They don't have any inner intuition, any inner guidance system. There is no moral compass. It doesn't exist. So the only way to counter that is speak out. Opposite of silence. Talk about Gaza. Tell your neighbors the holiday season's coming up. You're going to go to all these holiday parties. You're like, but it'll make people uncomfortable. Get uncomfortable. That's the point. Speak out. Talk to your middle-aged white people, your uncle, cousin, neighbor, whoever it is. Speak out. There is no freedom. There is no liberation unless it's collective. Because when you're saying, but it's happening in Gaza, that shit, if you enable it, is going to come to your doorstep. When you say things like, oh, it's domestic violence, it's happening behind closed doors. I'm not the child. I'm not the wife that's being abused. That person, because you enable them, 5 years from now is going to get a gun, going to go to Walmart and shoot down you and your friends. Because you didn't do anything 5 years ago. We know history. We know how this plays out. It's not like, oh, we have no idea. We know how this plays out. Next one. They care about money. Boycott. Same things. Speaking out and boycotting worked with the Indian Revolution. It worked in when there was the civil justice movement with MLK, I forget, 1970s. That's the only way forward. It needs to be external motivation. They don't have any internal moral compass. You speaking out changes they care about public perception more than anything else. Particularly domestic violence victims. Tell everybody that you're being victimized, who the abuser is. The system, police, the justice system, family court, there's a reason they put gag orders on protective mothers and children who have been abused by their parent. They put gag orders because you know the truth and they need to quell it. They want complete elimination of they want domination. Israel wants domination because they want to remove the truth. The existence of Palestine is a problem because at some point they will tell the whole world what they've been subjected to. The same thing. That's what domestic violence offenders do. It's never one-off instance. It's always escalating and they want the total annihilation of the victim because they don't want the existence of the victim existing. Just existing and living and breathing is a problem. And they want them to die. The problem isn't that they're abusive. This happens with every abuser. Right? Like a rapist. The problem isn't that they did the rape. The problem is that why do rapists murder the victim? Because they want the evidence to go away. The evidence of what they did. The problem isn't that they did it. The problem is the evidence existing. There's a reason why there's a genocide happening. They want the existence to be wiped out. So you talking about it, it changes public perception. It changes public perception of what Israel is doing, what Zionists are doing. It changes the perception that these so-called, community men, these CEOs, these men who have like high value in society are not abusive. The second people see them as abusive, that's when they stop. Money, when you start boycotting Starbucks or whatever, McDonald's, wherever the money's coming from, when you tell your senators and your representatives to stop sending American taxpayer dollars to fund a genocide. When the money stops, that's when they take notice. Same thing with abusers. Hold the abusers in your life accountable. All of us have some uncle or some cousin who has raped some other family member. We all have it. Yet we don't talk about it because the culture is, if it's a family member. So, we need to brush it under the carpet and not talk about it. Like, you don't know what happened. You don't know. A child who has been subjected to rape is not going to lie. They're not going to lie about it. You would rather, because it's so uncomfortable for people to believe that there are people who exist who can do that. Our family court system right now will send children to their rapists because they are their fathers. That's it. That is the reasoning. We live in a society, it's still patriarchal in the sense where men own women and children. We are property, right? Not true, but that's how the legal system sees us. Because if a crime is done by a stranger, if a stranger assaulted me, that is a criminal conviction. If my husband assaults me, that goes to family court. Oh, it's a family issue, it's a domestic issue, family court. Family court is a civil case. Civil cases of a property. It's for renter-tenant disputes. It's for non-compliance with like some sort of a sale deed or something like that. It is not for human rights. Because in a criminal issue, you are innocent until proven guilty. Not so in civil cases. Yet we send women and children who have been subjected to human rights violations to civil court. Why? Because they are considered property. There's a myth of, extreme violence, rapes, murders, abuse happens by strangers. Statistics show less than 10% of these high whatever high or intense crimes are conducted by strangers. It's usually 90% of the time somebody somebody you work with, your own spouse, your parent, your teacher, your coach, somebody from the clergy. It's somebody you know. And yet when it's somebody you know, it's considered domestic and sent to domestic court. So how many high level crimes are we not even accounting for, because there's the myth of, oh, it's like a stranger that's masked in the back alleyway who does all these rapes and does all these child abuse. Like, no, it's somebody they know. It's 90% of the time somebody that the victim knows, yet we just ignore it. That's the issue. We need to start judging people by their behaviors and not their titles. We need to start looking at the behaviors of people and not just being like, oh, because they're a father, we assume, oh, they're a father, so they aren't capable of raping their children. They do, and they get custody because they're the father. Like, we judge them because they're the father, not because they raped their child. Like today in America, in Pennsylvania, if a father raped their child and went to get custody, they will get custody. Our legal system literally child traffics children, minors, to their rapist. This doesn't happen anywhere in any, if you would say, do this like a rapist, like a stranger, this myth of, oh, it's a masked stranger in an alleyway. If a masked stranger in the alleyway said, oh, I raped this person, here's all this money, give me access to this person, you would say that's bizarre. No one would be okay with that. But if that rapist is the father, yay, let's do it. People make money off of this today in America, in family court. And it's the same kind of behavioral patterns when it comes to mass genocide, when it comes to like Gaza or any, like, it does not even about Gaza. It's about, like, you look at history, right? With the Indian independence, with American civil justice issues, there's one aggressor, there's one victim. And if you look at who's the one who's escalating the conflict, they don't want peace, they want domination. Who's the one who wants domination? It is beyond doubt who the aggressor is. The myth of, oh, mutual abuse, it's too complicated, we don't know who it is, we need to get over it. And the only way to counter that is stop being silent and use your money. Boycott. Make sure the aggressor does not have access to the funds they use to continue the aggression, and make sure their public perception is damaged. That it works like wonders. I'm telling you, the second they feel like their power, because the power comes from public perception. The second they feel their public perception or their finances are being jeopardized, they will stop. So that's all I have for today. Again, as I mentioned in my last post, I'm creating this YouTube series called Reconnecting Humanity. We're going through this major crisis right now where in America, according to Pew Research, 15% of men have zero friends, which is not just so sad they have zero friends. It's an actual public health and public safety issue, because not being socially connected puts you at a greater risk for violence and basically being more prone for conspiracy theories, and it increases the amount of misogyny. These are the same kind of people who join incel culture. And my whole series is about not just these people, but in general, people who don't feel like, if you see an image of somebody, like a minor child being subjected to abuse, being subjected to rape, being subjected to war, being subjected to terror, and it doesn't move you internally, your body doesn't feel like, I need to do something. If you feel so disconnected from humanity, where it's like I spoke in my last chapter, it's like, oh, it's happening somewhere else. It's okay for me to turn a blind eye, because they're not people. They're just characters in a storybook. It's just a mannequin, right? Like that's how psychopaths think. It's easy for them to murder other people because they think other people are NPCs. They think other people are mannequins. They can't see the humanity in other people because they're not connected to their own humanity. So my YouTube series is all about the neuroscience behind empathy, behind connection to self and connection to humanity. We are social creatures. We are biologically social creatures. We are biologically geared to empathy, to compassion, to kindness. And when people don't do that, they are neurologically broken. They're broken on the inside. They could change. There is such a thing as neuroplasticity, but it really needs, like, nobody can do that for them. They should want to do that. But because of invention, they don't have an internal moral compass. They will never. They're like dogs, quite literally. You need to dangle a doggy biscuit in front of them for them to do anything. They won't do anything. So unless we have external consequences, they will not change. Just appealing to their inner goodness, it doesn't work. It doesn't exist. So external consequences. Boycott, talk about it. Ruin their public reputation, take away the finances. That is the only two ways to end this, to end the genocide, to take care of domestic violence, to take care of child abuse, to take care of animal cruelty. Stop being silent, and it starts at home. You all have somebody in your family, a cousin, an uncle, some neighbor who regularly engages in abuse, and we all choose to turn away and see what I don't know if it's happening. It's happening. You know it's happening, and you have chosen to be silent about it. And you're part of the problem. So unless at some point you also want to be exposed to because this level of conflict, you need to do something about it. I urge you again, call your senators, call your representatives at the federal level, ask them to oppose the genocide, to stop American taxpayer dollars going to all these people. we shouldn't be using our taxpayer dollars. Your money is being used to murder innocent children. Palestine is a majority country with just filled with minors. More than 50% of the population there is under the age of 18. And those are the kind of people who are being carpet bombed right now. So please, I urge you once again, when this is uploaded, I'm going to link the, there's like a page where you can just put your address and it'll pull up who your representatives are, and you can just send them an email. It's that simple. It makes a difference. Sending emails, calling your representatives does make a difference. It shows them the public perception is changing and the time is now. We cannot wait. This is extremely urgent. Please don't support genocide is all I have to say. All right, thank you. All right, end this. Oh, okay.